In this video, we're going to talk about how to use past to make graphs. So before you start this, the homework assignment, you should look at chapter 2 in Lane's book where he talks about graphing, and then look at the sections in the PowerPoint where where I talk about graphing a little bit. And then I think if you watch this video, it'll be relatively easy to do the homework. Okay, so let's take a look at this homework. So if you go on, onto the course and you're looking at your calendar, you can click on the homework there and find out what you've got to do. All right. So for this homework, you're going to generate 3 graphs with captions. All right, and this goes along with the quiz part of this first week's assignment. And you'll notice that it's not due until Friday at 11:30 p.m., but you can turn it in anytime, and you really ought to try and get it done sooner rather than later, just so you aren't racing to finish it at the very end. Okay, so notice that in this homework assignment, we have some details about what we want each graph to look like. I'm going to show you how to set those in a minute. And then some information about how to write a caption. All right, and then here's a list of the 3 types of graphs. Now you're going to be generating graphs using the Dendrogama data. This is in on D2L. There's a file on D2L. I'm going to use the Lophocolades data just to sort of show you how to do this assignment. So it'll give you examples. All right. So for example, you're going to make a bar chart of Guhlers for the 3 species of Dendrogama. We're going to do something a little different, just for illustration. But I think after watching my illustration of how to do this assignment, this should be relatively easy for you. Okay, so we'll put this away. All right. So here, what I've done, let me just see if we can't enlarge this a little bit. All right, let's see here. Let's pull the whole screen down. Okay, let's see here. I have this magnifier that is a little clunky to use. Let me see. Well, it was working earlier. Now it is not. Oh, God, okay, here we go. Finally. All right. Okay, so what I've done here is I've put in some data from the Lophocolades data set into PASS so I can show you how to make some graphs. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is make bar graphs and box plots. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the snout vent length data for these 2 species. I've got tail length for Leutkini in here, which we're going to use for a different graph. So I'm just going to remove that for now. And you can remove columns of data, and then you can just hit undo, and they'll come back. So we'll do that in a minute. But first, what I've got sort of the snout vent length data for Leutkini and the snout vent length data for Acleas here on the left. All right. So let's try working with those first. All right, so we're going to select those 2 things. Now to make a box plot or a bar chart, you select this tab, so plot, and there's various types of graphs. So we're going to work with these 2, bar chart and box plot. Okay, so when you click on it, notice that the default is a bar chart. All right. Now, I want to point out this thing here to you. See, it says whisker type. These whiskers that you see here, those are standard error, but what we want is standard deviation. And if you click standard deviation, notice both these boxes are clicked. You have both the standard error and the standard deviation. We don't want that either, so we're going to remove the standard error. All right. That's about all you really have to set over there. But we have some problems with this graph. Notice, for example, this axis doesn't have a label. So, what's it supposed to be? Nobody's going to know. So to fix that, what we do is we go into the graph settings. All right. Now this is where you can look at the assignment and see what graph settings you need. But a couple of things we're going to do. Let's say, you know, maybe this isn't something you have to do. You can leave the color there, I guess. But if you wanted it to be in black and white, you can remove the color like that. We're going to use thick lines just because it makes a nicer graph here. I'll move this so you can sort of see what's happening. And then we're going to remove the frame. A lot of journals actually require you to remove frames like that. Now, this looks a little crowded to me because of the way the axis over here is cutting off. So I'm going to change that to 90 just to give us a little more space. All right. Now, let's see. So with a bar chart like this, we can't really label the x-axis, even though there's a place for it over here. But we can definitely label the y-axis. Now, I wonder what that should be. So remember, this was snout vent length data. All right. So that's what we actually have over there. We have the snout vent lengths. Now, a label for an axis should be in title case, all right, which means everything's capitalized except for small, you know, words. It's just like a title of a book, right? Snout vent length, all right? What that is, that's the distance from the tip of the snout to something we call the cloaca in reptiles, which is where the anus is located. All right. So it's like the length of the head and the body. That's what this is. All right. So notice that I put the units, which are millimeters for this measurement, in parentheses. Okay. All right. Now let's see what else we want to do. There are no symbols on here, so we won't need to adjust that. However, we want to use a different font. So what we're using for this is Arial. All right. So select Arial, and then you want to use 12-point text. Now the text is a little more readable. All right. Usually in scientific papers, you want to use sans serif fonts. So you want to avoid things like Courier, especially in illustrations. All right. So let's see here. I think everything is ready now. So our graph looks pretty good. Okay. The next step would be to import this thing into you know, a Word document and write a caption for it. So to copy it, what you're going to do is you're just going to hit copy there. All right. Now I'm going to see if I can get back out of this. Hold on, that didn't do what I wanted. Where's the little magnifier? All right, let's see here. There we go. That's working. All right. Let's see. So here's a Word document. Let me enlarge this so you guys can see it. All right, how about that? That'll probably be big enough for everybody. Okay, so you're going to put all three of your graphs into one single document, and you can just call them, you know, like figure 1, 2, and 3, right? So we'll make this one figure 1. All right. Now you essentially, in a caption, you want to tell people basically what they're looking at here. So what this graph does for us is it compares the snout vent lengths of these two species of Lophocollodes. So that would be a good, you know, title of this or first few words of the caption. Comparison of snout vent lengths in two species of, whoops, hold on. Remember, a scientific name should be in italics, so you hit Control-I to get italics. Lophocollodes. All right, okay. You're going to be doing something with Dendrogama, and you're looking at Goulers, I believe. Okay, I think you'll have 3 species there. All right. Now, the other thing we need to do is we need to tell people what any weird symbols are in that graph and what they mean. So you may have noticed there were a couple of different options for whiskers, and we chose standard deviation. So we need to tell people what the whiskers are. All right. So we might put here, whiskers are 1 standard. Oh, actually, let's not call them whiskers. Let's call them error bars. That's what people would use. If you put whiskers, people might laugh at you. Error bars are one standard deviation around the mean. By the way, in a bar chart like this, what is the top of that? Well, you can actually look at your data to find out, but that's actually the mean, is the top of the gray area. So notice this doesn't even tell us what the maximum value is. You can't get that information from that particular graph. Okay? All right, so once we've written a caption, then if you just hit return, you can paste the graph in. Remember I hit copy to copy the graph? So to paste it, you hold the control button down and you hit V, and that pastes the graph in there into your Word document. All right, and you know, it's possible to resize this thing if you want. You know, might make it a little smaller just so it fits a little better. You know, ideally, I suppose we don't want this font to be teeny tiny, so don't turn in something really little. Okay, the first one's ready. All right, so now we can put this down and we'll make a different graph. All right, let's see, we have an invalid argument here. Okay, all right, so we're going to zoom back in here so I can show you, let's see if we can get this over here, show you how to make a box plot now. All right, so we're going to select these two things again. All right, go to plot, bar chart and box plot. Okay, let me pull that over. All right, so here's our bar chart. If you go up here, you can choose a box plot. Okay, so this box plot is similar to the ones that Lane gives us as examples, but it doesn't have any outliers. So to get outliers, you click this box. Okay? All right, so one thing I'd like for you to do when you're preparing is find out what these outliers are. So they're not, so that's actually the minimum score, like that's the smallest individual. But it is outside what's called the outer fence, and that's why it's a far outlier. This one's outside the near fence, so it's a near outlier. Notice there's two near outliers. On the other hand, Lüdkenai doesn't have any outliers. Now what about these lines here? So those lines in the middle, those are the median. And then the top of the box and the bottom of the box, that's the 25th and 75th percentiles. All right. This is the maximum and the minimum values. So like in the range of Lüdkenai, whereas here they're over there. All right. So the tops of these are not the maximum values in Aklios because it has outliers. All right. So we still need to add a label over here. So let's go into the graph settings. All right. Again, we can do a lot of the same stuff we did before. So we're going to use a font. We're going to use Arial as a font. Where's Arial? There it is. Okay. 12-point font. So this time we have some symbols. We're going to make those 4 a little bit bigger just so people can see them. We're going to use thick lines. We're going to remove the frame. I was noticing over here that the axis on the y-axis starts at 20. We don't really need that. I think we can probably make that 0 since, you know, now we have a real 0 on the graph. Always try and have one of those. It's not always possible. All right, and then we need a label for the y-axis. So these are snout vents lengths again. Okay, millimeters. All right. Another thing that you can do, notice how there's a lot of tick marks over here. You can decrease the number of those just to make this a little less, you know, busy if you want. Okay, so that's possible. This can be really important if you have it's what we call discrete data. Like let's say you're working with counts of Goulers, like for the homework, and you have decimals over here. You don't want decimals if it's counts. So you want to adjust the tick marks until decimals go away. All right, now again, we're ready to copy it. All right, notice we've got a couple things checked over here, like you want to be using interpolation to figure out what the percentiles are. This is just like for other problems we've done, and we want to select outliers. All right, so I'm ready to copy it. Okay. Now let's see, so we're going to have to go back to where we were and open up our homework assignment. All right, so you want to Be sure you're out of this box here. I think that'll work. There we go. Okay, so figure 2. All right, so let's describe what this graph is doing. Let me see if we can pull it over here so you can sort of see it. All right, again, we are comparing, the snout vent lengths. In 2 species of Lophocolotes. Okay, I've got names on the graph, so I don't need to tell people which one's which, but I definitely want to tell them what the little L stands for, so that's why I've got it here. All right, so now let's see. This time you don't really say what the error bars are because it's a box plot. People are supposed to know what they are. So it's kind of like known in the scientific community. On the other hand, we do need to say how the percentiles were calculated because there's various options, like there's the rounding option, for example. Lane gives you another way that percentiles can be calculated. So we will say percentiles calculated using interpolation. All right, so that's what we did, or what PASS does when it calculates these percentiles. All right, now another thing we can do is we need to tell people what these symbols mean. So we could say something like Lophocolotes acleus has 2 near outliers, and we'll say this is an open circle, right? And 1 far outlier, asterisk. Okay, now you may not even have any outliers in your data. I'm not really sure because I haven't looked to see what the graph is going to look like. Okay, so then we're ready to paste in the graph. And again, we can resize this thing just so it's not so gigantic. All right, and now we're ready for the last graph. Okay. All right. So for the other one, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at correlations here. All right. So sometimes the films stop in the middle, so I'm actually going to stop this film here and we'll make a new film showing correlation analysis.